Hello, welcome to our short video introducing you to some important facts about the Anglo-Saxons that we think you need to know. You're probably aware that the Anglo-Saxons were Germanic people from Northern Europe who came to Britain after the Roman army left around about 400 or 450 AD. And they came from the part of Europe that is now around Denmark, northern Germany and the Low Countries. But did you know that Queen Elizabeth II can trace her family tree back to Alfred the Great, who was an Anglo-Saxon king, and therefore to the god Woden. Now, Woden was the chief of the gods that were worshipped by the Anglo-Saxons when they first came to Britain in the 5th century. Then in the 9th century, Alfred decided to do his own family tree, and despite being a Christian, he was delighted to discover that it included the god Woden himself. And because Queen Elizabeth can trace her family tree back to Alfred the Great, that means that Woden is part of Queen Elizabeth's family tree as well. Now, the Anglo-Saxons ruled in England for over 600 years. In comparison, the Romans only ruled for about 400 years, the Normans less than 200, and the Vikings didn't even manage 40. In fact, there were 4 Danish kings of England. The first was Sweyn Forkbeard, who defeated the Anglo-Saxon king Athelred the Unready in 1013. But Sweyn died only a few weeks later, and Athelred came back for a second term. After Athelred died in 1016, Sweyn's son Knut managed to win the English throne back again, and he in turn was succeeded by his 2 sons, Harold Harefoot and Harthacnut. But after them, the English throne reverted to the Anglo-Saxon kings, and the next king, in 1042, was Edward the Confessor. The Anglo-Saxons were also the first Northern Europeans to write laws in their own language instead of using Latin, and they also translated many existing Latin works into Old English, which was the language they spoke. A lot of this translation was because of Alfred the Great. He thought it was really important that people should be able to read and understand the books that he called the most needful for men to know. These included religious works, history, and works of philosophy. But Alfred wasn't the first king to record his laws in Old English. That was Athelbert of Kent, about 300 years earlier. His law code was written down around 600 AD. Not only is it the earliest recorded document in Old English, but it's also thought to be the only Germanic law code in the whole of Europe written in the native language of its people. Now, King Alfred visited Rome twice, once when he was 4 and again when he was 6. He went with his father, King Athelwulf, and people from his father's court. It was a really long journey. It took over 3 months each way, and it was also really quite dangerous. Lots of people died travelling to or from Rome. But at the same time, the journey was made by a large number of people because it was really important for Anglo-Saxons to be able to go to Rome and even on to Jerusalem, in fact, on pilgrimage. They wanted to visit the shrines of the saints or see the Pope or just be in Rome itself. And in fact, so many Anglo-Saxons did travel to Rome that part of the Vatican Hill became known as the Schola Saxonum, or the Saxon Quarter. And that's where the Anglo-Saxons stayed when they were visiting Rome, either for religious purposes or political or for trade. The last Anglo-Saxon king was Harold Godwinson, and he was king in 1066. It was a really difficult year. There was a series of battles because other people seemed to think they should be king of England, even though Harold had been chosen by the nobles and anointed and crowned in January. Towards the end of the year, Harold Hardrada, who was the king of Norway, invaded in the north of England, and he defeated the Anglo-Saxon militias outside York at the Battle of Fulford. Our king, Harold Godwinson, marched his army from London to Stamford Bridge, which is near York, and it's where the Norwegian army was staying. He was so quick getting there that he surprised the Norwegians and defeated them in battle. Harold Hardrada was one of those killed during the fighting. Our King Harold then returned south, and a couple of weeks later he had to face another invader. William the Duke of Normandy, who also wanted the throne of England. And so it was at the Battle of Hastings on the 14th of October 1066 that our King Harold was killed. But that wasn't the end of the Anglo-Saxons. They're still all around us today. So much of the work they did in creating the country we call England is still with us. They established the shires and parishes, the main towns and the rural landscape. But most importantly, they left us their language. Old English changed over the years to become the modern English we speak today, but many of the words are still recognisable. For example, when Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon in 1969, he's famous for saying, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." If he had been speaking to an Anglo-Saxon, he would have said, "This is een smal stap for man, een gigantisch leap voor mankind." Thank you for watching our video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Take time to have a look at the other articles on our website, and thank you again for listening.